Now it seems, yes, we are live. Hello, and thank you everyone for joining this art talk. Our art talk today is with the De Young Museum in San Francisco. And the topic is the role of space in the work of the artist Richard Diebenkorn. My name is Simon Rhein. I work at the Google Cultural Institute in London. And I look forward to learn today from the guests about the work of Richard Diebenkorn. I'm delighted to introduce you to Sarah Bailey-Hogarty. She's Social and Digital Media Manager for the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco, and she will moderate today's art talk. But before I hand over to you, Sarah, I just wanted to say that this is a live hangout. Everybody watching can be part of the conversation, so if you have any questions, just ask by posting your question on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube using the hashtag #ArtTalks. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Simon. Hi, everybody. We're really excited to bring together this great group of speakers to talk about Richard Diebenkorn, whose work is the subject of an exhibition currently on view at the De Young Museum. Richard Diebenkorn, The Berkeley Years, 1953 to 1966. And we basically began thinking about this format for a discussion about Diebenkorn's work when the Diebenkorn Foundation generously gave us permission to gigapixel scan Diebenkorn's seminal work, Seawall. And this represents a huge boon for us and the Google Art Project as well, just because so many contemporary and modern artists aren't represented as a result of copyright issues. So this is a really exciting time for us and made perfect sense in the context of our exhibition to look deeper into his work. And now that we have all of these sort of wonderful arenas of space to think about, we thought we would kind of break it out into that theme. So first we'll hear from Emma Acker, our Assistant Curator of American Art for the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, who was a curator on the show and a contributor to the catalog. And she'll discuss the role of aerial and pictorial space in the work of Richard Diebenkorn. And then we'll move on to Mark Levitelli, who is an artist and professor of humanities at Medaille College, as well as a Richard Diebenkorn scholar, and has contributed essays to catalogs about Diebenkorn's Albuquerque years. So he'll really focus on the role of geographic space in Diebenkorn's work. And then we'll move on to hear from Carl Schmitz, who is the Visual Resources and Art Research Librarian at the Richard Diebenkorn Foundation. And he'll sort of examine how Diebenkorn's work is presented in a print and digital format, and all of the technical issues and intricacies that have gone on in the development and implementation of the catalog raisonné, which the foundation is working on currently. And then finally, we'll round out the discussion with Sarah Kimmerly, who is our Google Art Project intern at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. And she was one of the main coordinators and impetus behind the scanning of Seawall. And so she'll really take us behind the scenes, and we can see the Google magic that happens when one of these works is included into the Google Art Project. So we're really looking at, aerial and pictorial space, geographic space, print, digital, and of course moving into this interesting world of cyber and digital space in the context of Richard Diebenkorn. So with that, I will leave off with Emma Acker.
Well, hello, and thank you so much, Sarah, for that wonderful introduction and for bringing all of us together here to talk about these really fascinating issues. And I'll just jump right off with the first slide, if you don't mind, Simon. Is it live? I'm not seeing it, but
yes, it's up there.
Okay, great. Well, this is, of course, Seawall from 1957, which is a kind of tour de force of Diebenkorn's period, and it's actually one of my personal favorites in the exhibition. I'm so pleased that it's the sort of impetus for this gigapixel project and our discussion today. Despite its very small scale, it has a tremendous visual presence and a kind of visceral immediacy. You can really feel its power from across a gallery. And it's also one of the most dramatic examples of Diebenkorn's use of an aerial perspective in his figurative work. And this is a viewpoint that really recurs throughout both his abstract and figurative works in the Berkeley period, and indeed throughout his entire career. So we could move on to the next slide. And I'm showing you on the left this very early untitled drawing by Diebenkorn, which I actually found when researching the Diebenkorn Foundation's database, which is very comprehensive, and this dates to probably about 1944 to 45. And in it, Diebenkorn presents this nighttime view of a rooftop and facade of this kind of low-lying building. And with this very sort of unusual elevated vantage, he gives this scene this sort of surreal, even menacing quality, and it recalls very much works by his great artistic sort of influence and hero, Edward Hopper. And it's actually probably a view of one of the barracks at either Quantico, Virginia, or Camp Pendleton, California, where Diebenkorn was actually transferred as a member of the United States Marine Corps between 1944 and 45. And it was during his years as a Marine that Diebenkorn actually gained experience working as a cartographer, which really gave him an opportunity to consider and depict landscape in a highly flattened, abstracted manner. And with that, we can go to the next slide. You can really see the kind of map-like qualities and references in works such as these from Diebenkorn's Sausalito period from 1947 to late 1949, and they really reflect perhaps these early experiences with cartography and his emergent interest in an aerial perspective. You can really feel a sense of the coastal topography of Northern California in these works. Next slide. Sorry, Simon, you can go to the next one. Great. And I just wanted to show these two examples. On the left, a 19th century print by the Japanese artist Hiroshige, and on the right, a 1987 print by Yvonne Jacquet, both in our collections, which incorporate a kind of aerial or bird's eye perspective. And they really show the way in which this viewpoint tends to abstract form into flattened planes of color and geometry. And so really have a lot in keeping visually with the kind of stylistic characteristics of abstract expressionism, which is really the dominant influence on Diebenkorn's art from the mid-1940s until he turns to representation in 1955. Next slide. So Diebenkorn really first becomes aware of abstract expressionism in 1945, seeing works by New York school artists in reproduction. But this exposure is really heightened when the following year he enrolls at the California School of Fine Arts, which is now the San Francisco Art Institute, which really became a kind of center for abstract expressionism on the West Coast, with faculty who included Clifford Still, who I'm showing you on the left in front of one of his works of art, who is really a kind of very dogmatic and strict proponent of pure abstraction in art. And equally kind of prescriptive was the American art critic and kind of reigning advocate of abstract expressionism, Clement Greenberg, who I'm showing you on the right, who really maintained that a work of art should visually assert the elements of its own construction. So in the case of painting, by really emphasizing the two-dimensional surface of the picture plane. So Diebenkorn was very aware of and interested in these theories that Greenberg put forth, but he resisted the kind of very sort of strict lines in the sand that he drew between representation and pure abstraction. And of all the abstract expressionists, Diebenkorn really came to most admire the work of Willem de Kooning, who often pulled in references or allusions to the external world into his kind of ostensibly abstract work. Next slide. So in these works, which are from the period that Diebenkorn spent in Albuquerque, New Mexico, pursuing his Master of Fine Arts degree, you can really see the influence of abstract expressionists such as de Kooning with these kind of calligraphic lines, but they also suggest a kind of topographic survey of landscape. And they were perhaps, in fact, inspired by the kind of elevated vistas and vantages that Diebenkorn might have experienced from Albuquerque's West Mesa. Next slide. But it wasn't until the late spring or early summer of 1951 that Diebenkorn really fully experienced an aerial view. And this was during his first daytime civilian flight, traveling from Albuquerque to San Francisco. And for Diebenkorn, the views that he saw from the plane were a kind of artistic epiphany. And he recalls that the Earth's skin itself had presence. I mean, it was all like a flat design, and everything was usually in the form of an irregular grid. A bit later, I started photographing through airplane windows and actually got quite good results. And so these images are actually from slides that are held by the Diebenkorn Foundation that Diebenkorn actually took from an airplane window in the early 1960s, which is really fascinating. Next slide. So Diebenkorn, just remembering the kind of exhilaration that he felt during this flight and its impact on his work, remembered, "I was absolutely knocked out and thrilled, really taken. It wasn't that I went right to the canvas and said, I'm going to paint, but it just went right into the mill and started coming out strong." Next slide. And in his ensuing compositions, and I'm showing you on the left and in the center works from his late Albuquerque period, and on the right a work he made while living in Urbana, Illinois, he really sort of incorporates and responds to these aerial impressions of fields, mountains, mesas, towns, and rivers. Next slide. So in the 58 sort of extant, works that are known to exist, works from Diebenkorn's abstract Berkeley series, which he made between the fall of 1953 and early 1956, there's often a very strong suggestion of an aerial perspective. And in these works, Diebenkorn is really merging the kind of formal rigors and gestural energies of abstract expressionism with his own emotional and visual and sensory impressions of the Bay Area landscape. And you can see in these works the very brilliant jewel tones of his palette really convey a sense of this sort of lush greenery and light-filled landscapes of Northern California. Next slide. And interestingly, critics of Diebenkorn's day really observed and commented on these landscape references. And here, actually on the left, is this wonderful reproduction from a 1957 Life magazine article, which shows Diebenkorn standing next to his abstract expressionist Berkeley number 44 from 1955 under a photograph of possibly the Napa Valley, a landscape of Northern California. And the work is described in the article as recalling the sweeping patterns of the fertile lands north of San Francisco. Next slide. So in spite of the kind of critical acclaim that was really growing around the abstract works in Diebenkorn's Berkeley series, he really became increasingly disenchanted with abstract expressionism. He started to view it as what he termed a stylistic straitjacket, and began searching for ways for his ideas to be worked on and altered by what was out there, or sort of the external world. But it wasn't until the late fall of 1955 that he made what he described as his first representational landscape, which is this small oil on canvas I'm showing you here, Chabot Valley. And although we can recognize it as a kind of urban or suburban landscape, what's interesting is that the paint is very richly and expressively handled, as in Diebenkorn's abstract expressionist works. Next slide. And back to Seawall, which was made just 2 years later, and also manages to kind of seamlessly merge representation with the very sort of raw gestural brushwork, surface richness, and emphasis on the formal properties of paint and canvas that are kind of hallmarks of abstract expressionism. So Diebenkorn actually made this work in his studio based on his memories of a trip he took up the Northern California coast. But he still manages to convey the freshness and vibrancy of a clear day in the Bay Area as though he were painting on plein air. And this kind of sweeping aerial perspective that he adopts here really gives us the surreal sense that we're soaring high above the landscape. And from this sort of lofty vantage, the earth and sea below resemble a kind of patchwork of abstract forms. Next slide. And I love this sort of very rich gestural brushwork that he uses to describe the sky. There's this really fascinating way in which such zones of paint function as kind of areas of pure abstraction. I'm thinking here of a Rothko composition, just very beautiful treatment of the paint surface. Next slide. And then very fascinatingly, there's this contrast between the sort of strict geometries on the left and the very loose brushwork and sort of wide flat field of green on the right. So you can see on the left that he's using these sharp tonal contrasts to both convey a sense of three-dimensionality, but also to create this very complex, paradoxically very flat, jigsaw-like pattern. Speaking of which, I'm very excited to work on my 500-piece jigsaw puzzle of seawall this weekend. And then to the right, we have this totally contrasting, as I said, very loose, sketchy brushwork that he uses to describe a field of green grass. He's allowed the ground of the canvas to really show through. He's actually scraped through layers of paint at the lower right to create this kind of sort of track of two parallel lines that resemble a kind of path or a trail and really lead our eye upwards and outside the confines of the picture plane. Next slide. Oh, I think we're missing one more of seawall, but that's fine. Just to say that the way in which Diebenkorn treats the surface in this very sensuous and varied way really reflects his notion that reality has to be digested. It has to be transmuted by paint. It has to be given a twist of some kind. And he's using the aerial view to really sort of incorporate these very radical formal innovations, but also convey his own impressions, his own sort of emotional responses to the unique climate and topography of the Bay Area. And this is a landscape in which he's very deeply rooted. And I just want to conclude with this wonderful quote from a 1992 interview in which Diebenkorn says, "I'm a very impressionable person, and I think the landscape will sometimes lead me to something. It usually has." Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Emma. Mark, you want to pick off and take us to Albuquerque?
Absolutely. Emma, thank you for that.
Excuse me, let me just quick jump in here because it looks like we have our final speaker who is having a bit of technical difficulties, but I think we have her logged on, and that is June Felter, an artist working in and around the Bay Area who studied under Richard Diebenkorn. June, can you hear us? All right, well, we'll work with them to get them all set up while, Mark, you begin your talk.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Emma, for your excellent characterization of Diebenkorn's work, particularly the Albuquerque period. In the late 1940s, as you alluded to, Richard Diebenkorn was part of the dynamic art scene at the California School of Fine Arts, which is now the San Francisco Art Institute. And he had received acknowledgement as a talented young painter, but he needed a change. He said, he had just started teaching there after graduating, and he said, I was the bottom man, or Ed, referring to Ed Corbett, and I were at the bottom end of the totem pole at the school, still was at the top. But at any rate, I had all the GI Bill that I hadn't touched. I was always struggling and trying to make ends meet and buy paint, and my students would go to the school store and come loaded with these bags full of materials. They were veterans. So I just couldn't stand that and decided I was going to be on the GI Bill. So I thought, well, there must be a university in New Mexico. So he attended the University of New Mexico from 1950 through 1952 and earned a master's degree. Actually, the university did not offer a Master of Fine Arts degree at the time. Some people think Diebenkorn had an MFA, but it's actually an MA. Aspects of the New Mexico environment that are seen in the Albuquerque paintings are livestock, the strong horizontal edge of the West Mesa of Albuquerque, and, as Emma had alluded to, explained the aerial views of the western landscape. In Albuquerque, Diebenkorn was free from the influence of his mentors in San Francisco, especially David Park. And because he was older than most of the other graduate students at the time, he painted largely on his own. In a 1955 interview, Jim Cheville quoted Diebenkorn, who said, "I lived in Albuquerque, and it was a fine situation for painting. I had a studio on campus. Somehow the flat line of the western mesa of Albuquerque may have influenced my work. Temperamentally, perhaps, I'd always been a landscape painter, but I was fighting the landscape feeling. For years, I didn't have the color blue on my palette because it reminded me of the spatial qualities in conventional landscapes. But in Albuquerque, I relaxed and began to think of natural forms in relation to my own feelings." Miller 22, could we see the first slide, please? Miller 22 exhibits a thin beige field of oil paint that is in direct contradiction to the kind of thick paint surfaces that David Park encouraged. It also shows edge-line forms that the advanced young painters in San Francisco believed in as a way to activate the entire rectangular surface of the painting. The lines suggest shapes of cattle that populated the fields around the house on Gabaldon Road in Albuquerque, where the Diebenkorns lived. Diebenkorn also did a number of black and white paintings in Albuquerque, one of which he entitled "Disintegrating Pig," inspired by a visit to the New Mexico State Fair. Next slide, please. Albuquerque number 11 shows the strong mesa shape that he mentioned. You can see it at the top of the canvas. It also reoccurs in several Berkeley paintings, like Berkeley number 46 and Berkeley number 3. Many lines in this latter one form cryptic alphabet-like symbols, which Diebenkorn explored in many of his Albuquerque paintings, in part the result of seeing some late 1940s de Koonings painted in black and white. At some point, as Emma said, Diebenkorn took a plane trip to San Francisco, possibly to visit his parents, and he said the plane flew low over all kinds of country, and it blew his mind. That's the epiphany that Emma was talking about. This aerial view creates a landscape image without a horizon line that conjoins the flatness of the painting's surface. The painting Albuquerque, next slide, for example, doesn't have the line of the West Mesa, and instead has a field of burnt orange overlaid with black lines that could suggest fences or roads crossing the desert. The juxtaposition of busy areas and empty areas could be a reflection of perhaps seeing a cluster of ranch buildings in the middle of an expanse of grazing land. Yet Diebenkorn thoroughly internalized and transformed this aerial view as a source, and it added variety to his pictorial inventions. I think that Diebenkorn also saw a Gorky show in San Francisco during that visit, and this also confirmed for him the validity of using paint. Clearly, in both Urbana and Berkeley, Diebenkorn began using thicker paint and pushed it around and scraped it off a lot more. When I interviewed him in 1978, he mentioned a criterion for evaluating the quality of an abstract painting that I found very interesting. The gist of what he said went something like this: there should be 3 kinds of lines. Lines that outline shapes, lines that are independent of shapes, and lines that reveal themselves behind or underneath areas of color as vestiges of the painting process. We can see this in Berkeley 54. Next slide, please.
Got it.
And Albuquerque number 3. Like many of Diebenkorn's Albuquerque paintings, this latter one, Albuquerque number 3, shows the bleaching action of the strong New Mexico light. Subsequently, he did use more color. And when he was living in Santa Monica later in 1983, he, in an interview with Jan Butterfield, said, I was shocked when I was up in San Francisco, the San Francisco area, a month ago. It had been raining a lot, and the hills were green. And driving through Northern California on the way home, I couldn't believe a lot of the color. Then I started to think, God, that is the color I used to use when I lived up there. To sum up, the influences developed in New Mexico that most inform the Berkeley series paintings are the new openness to landscape influences and the pictorial innovations derived from the aerial view. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mark. All right, Carl, you want to take us into Journeys Through the Catalog Raisonné?
Yes. Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be part of the group and to follow Mark, who has written both about the Albuquerque period of Diebenkorn's art, but also the Berkeley period. And for the Albuquerque period, he, along with Jerry Nordland, were one of the two essayists for the Harwood Museum's 2006 exhibition catalog, Diebenkorn in New Mexico, which was actually the first big project that the nascent Diebenkorn Foundation worked on in terms of providing images for publication. We've learned a lot since then, but it actually wasn't so long after that, in 2008, when Emma called us here at the office and had a question about what were good bibliographic resources for looking into researching Diebenkorn's art. And thankfully, she had come to the right place. I work in two different worlds, at least. On one side, visual resources and digital photography, color management, production. And on the other side, art research, archival research, bibliographic research, research. But unfortunately, I don't have any of the action shots of the jiu-jitsu sessions that Emma and I had determining what citations could be included in the bibliography for the Berkeley Years catalog, or any action shots of Ann Carlstrom, who had to perform great kung fu on the citations to make sure that they were formatted correctly for publication. So I'd like to talk today, instead of the research side, about the reproductions for the catalog, what it was like to be on press for the catalog in Verona, Italy, when it was printed this year, and some of the concepts of space as a color as a space, which we use for the catalog raisonné and the photography that we do, and how it was implemented for the Berkeley Years catalog. And so the first slide, when it can be pulled up, will show the group that was on press in Verona, Italy at Trifolio printers.
Yeah.
And,
God, I don't know how you ever did all that.
I made a mistake.
sounds like June is in.
June and Susan, can you please mute your microphone so we can, just so you all can talk comfortably, and Carl can continue his talk. Thank you.
Thank you, June and Susan. Unfortunately, they weren't there with us in Verona, Italy, but the group that was there, from left to right, was Gretchen Diebenkorn Grant, and a wonderful resource in terms of when we were looking at things on the sheet for the few works that we weren't able to photograph, either for the catalog raisonné or for the Berkeley Years catalog. Did they look right? And to her right is Richard Grant, and Dick is the executive director of the Diebenkorn Foundation. And shortly after the artist passed away in 1993, he was appointed by the family to begin work on the catalog raisonné. For the past 8 years, I've been working with Dick, and we've been traveling across the country and sometimes to other countries to document Diebenkorn works for the catalog raisonné. To his right, and she's identifiable, unfortunately, in this shot only from the back of her black beret, but is Leslie Dutcher, who's director of publications at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, and was a wonderful advocate for this project and is a great overseer of it in general. And to her right is Massimo Tilloli, who's one of the partners at Trifolio in Verona, and is a wonderful master printer who had very exacting standards. We really did feel like we were in good hands working with Massimo. And this was a great educational opportunity for all of us at the Foundation in terms of working towards the catalog raisonné, which will, like the Berkeley Years catalog, also be published by Yale University Press a bit down the road in 2016. Whereas for this catalog, we worked on a couple hundred images. For the catalog raisonné, we're working with almost 5,000 artworks. So there's going to be quite a huge volume of reproductions. And for the catalog raisonné, we are investing great time and resources to document each of the works as completely and thoroughly and accurately as possible. So a part of this is doing our own digital photography, and we're as colorful about it as we can be in terms of the color management. But we're learning more, and this catalog was a great process of learning, because as careful as we are in the digital files, which are stored in an RGB color space, in order to print them on paper, they need to be transferred into the CMYK color space, which is a completely different deal. So we can have all these images and sort them up for years and years and years and finally publish once for the Cmyk resume. But if we don't learn about the printing process, the final result won't be as good as it can. And this is a great slide here that shows what the Cmyk separations look like. And in fact, from left to right, it goes from C, cyan, M, magenta, Y, yellow, and K, which is key or black. And so this is the magic that we've learned about, along with Leslie and under the tutelage of Mosma. And it was a great learning process. This next slide shows in terms of where we're beginning with the photography. So this is really the color space, but this is the color space of the digital camera that we use in the full range of colors that it is able to capture. But there's other tricks that come down the line. And so we start out with this great image that has all this wonderful range of colors. But we know that that image, if we're going to share it with other institutions like museums or galleries, or based upon all the images that we take at private collections, provide those images to the private collectors, that those images need to be in a file format that's more standardized. And so this big range of colors, when we can get the next slide, is taken down to a smaller range of colors. And so this is the standard RGB profile and how it get converted down from what we're originally doing with the camera photography. And the next slide will show pretty dramatically what is possible through the printing processes. And it's very limited, so we have to make sure that all these transitions are done as well as they can be done. Trifolio in Verona is actually working on a very special process that they have refined and developed themselves, but it's called Area W4, and there's not much, especially in the English language, out about it, but a few of the catalog projects that they've done are for the Cindy Sherman show that was at the SF MoMA and the New York MoMA, and the James Turrell catalog that the LA County Museum just put out, and the Berkeley Years catalog. And so this gamut, which is illustrating CMYK potential here, is actually, they estimate, 30% higher with Area W4. And we see in this next slide, which shows all three of these different gamuts compared, and the drop outline at the bottom is pretty telling. The furthest, the widest one being what we can do with the camera, the next one being what we can do with the digital file, and the interior one being what can be done in terms of CMYK or printing technology. And so when people like Trifolio tell us we can do better than that small gamut, we want to listen and we want to learn. It was great to do this with the Cmyk resume. As I said, we're working on 5,000, almost 5,000 works for the Cmyk resume. And there are some great quotes, some great things that Dick always remembers from his father-in-law, Dick Diebenkorn. He always remembers Dick Diebenkorn getting reproductions from catalogs or magazines and saying, you know, how bad they were, and if they can't get it right, why can't they just do it in black and white? As Mark mentioned, the influence of seeing those de Kooning reproductions in the Partisan Review, they all were in black and white. So why can't they just do that? But we're trying to do better than that. And Dick Grant also remembers Dick Diebenkorn, feels him on his shoulder saying, get the colors right. And that's what we're trying to do because it's very important to the artist's work. And one small quote, which Diebenkorn very succinctly put in a Buffalo Courier Express article that was published in December 5th of 1976. He said, "My colors come from where I work." And so that's great emphasis to get it all. And this is a wonderful test for the catalog resume. And if we can look at the next slide, to see everything come together when we were on press with the Berkeley Years catalog. And this is some of the sheets that as we looked at them and improved them and everything went through the entire print run, the approved sheet would go up on the board. And so there's the very beginning. And the whole week and a half that we were on press, was a very interesting meditative process of looking. We were looking at the sheets and comparing them to the proofs and then having the print run go. But then we were looking at it again when it was finished. And here's Dick and Gretchen looking at it in progress. And this next shot will show Leslie also looking at the sheets as it was in progress. And it kept getting bigger and bigger as the catalog was coming together. Although Leslie had worked on a number of production projects for the museum, this is her first time being on press. And it was a wonderful thing for the museums to invest in this project. Of course, a lot of loan exhibitions or group exhibitions, the visual resources might come from a variety of sources. They might be slides that comes out of shoe boxes or dusty, musty transparencies that might have turned magenta or different colors. But they all need to be turned into a product. And they all have to, it all has to be done. But in this case, for as much careful attention as we had put into the images, it was understood that this could be something special. And I think indeed it was. This final shot, or the second to last shot, excuse me, is Leslie signing off on one of the sheets. And I think this is a very wonderful thing because this is the last sheet that was approved for color reproductions that were coming off the press. And instead of Massimo, who signed off on all the other sheets, this is the one I got to sign, and it's the final one. And to see this project finalized was a wonderful thing. And so here's a bunch of the sheets. And I encourage everybody to go and see the show because the wonderful thing about an exhibition is it can give you the type of reality that is unique to a time and place. To see the show, to get to the De Young at Golden Gate Park, or to get down to the Palm Springs Museum. But for those that can't make it, we hope and encourage them to go and see the catalog. Thank you.
That's fascinating, Carl. Thank you so much. All right, well, Sarah, you want to take us even further down into the matrix, as it were, and talk a little bit about the gigapixel scanning?
Sure. I mean, that was really fascinating, just learning and hearing from all of you just about the 3 kinds of lines that Mark referenced earlier that are in Diebenkorn's work. The real reason that we are doing this gigapixel scan is to provide users with a really extreme, intimate experience with the work, and by enabling people to zoom in such detail, I think and hope that people after this talk, once the gigapixel scan goes live in a couple of months, that they'll search for Seawall on the Google Art project and try to find those 3 lines that Mark referenced earlier. I think it would be fascinating for everybody to be able to do that themselves and have such an intimate study of the work. So really, this all started with Google coming to the Fine Arts Museums and saying, inviting us to just scan one work in our collection, which is really kind of a hard decision for an institution to make when they have to pick just one work. But we were considering all the work that we had been doing with the Diebenkorn Foundation, the exhibition that's currently on display at the De Young Museum, and we had a conversation with Emma Acker about the possibility of scanning Seawall. And she seemed really enthusiastic about it. It seemed like the right choice for the museums. And to the credit of the museums and their relationship with the Diebenkorn Foundation, this was a really simple process to get the copyright approval. I mean, I would like to say that we had to use lots of lawyers and there were lots of different things that happened, but really we just sent a note and said, this is an opportunity, would this be something that you'd be interested in? And literally within hours, we had a positive response. So that really, I think, speaks to the relationship between these 2 institutions, as well as, kind of the situation that the Google Art Project has, where there's all these different copyright issues that prevent works from the 20th century in particular being displayed. And I'm just so grateful that the Diebenkorn Foundation is interested in digital technology and was open to this idea. So thank you guys again. And maybe I could just start by walking you through the day. The image that you see right now on the screen is a picture of the media room, which is in the De Young Museum. This is actually an exhibition space dedicated for new media and digital works. But because it was vacant, we decided to actually hold the scan in this space. There were a couple of advantages. You can see that there's a door on the right-hand side where that man is standing. And then in the corner, in the middle of the frame, you can see that there's another door. But there's actually no windows in this space. One of the most essential things for a successful gigapixel scan is to regulate the light. And so by having no windows in the space, that provided us to really control the light very scientifically. And you can see that, maybe if you go to the next slide, you can see even closer that there are two Kino flow lights that are about 3 meters away from the canvas. These are cold lights, so they don't damage the work. And again, their distance of 3 meters is a very non-invasive process. In the middle, we see that there's a Dslr camera. This is actually, to many people's surprise, is a very high-end camera, but it's a camera that's available in most Photoshop stores. But it's actually regulated on kind of an axis that's connected to the computer. So we don't have to touch the canvas at all. We don't have to even touch the camera when we're doing these gigapixel scans. It's all regulated from a computer, which you can see in the next slide. There were 3 engineers. Actually, Google outsources this scan to a company in Spain called MagPixel, and they came from Spain with 3 of their engineers. One was just in charge of the lights. One was just in charge of kind of the computer technology and the software behind the work. And one was just in charge of kind of the logistics for the day. So it was actually a quite small production. Also, someone has mentioned earlier that Seawall is actually a rather small painting. It's 51 by 66 centimeters. And so this enabled us to complete the scan in quite a short amount of time. It only took us about an hour and a half to actually scan the image. And what does the scan mean? Really what they did was they took 140 thumbnail, if you want to call that, for lack of a better word, small images of Seawall. And as kind of what they'll do is like a mosaic, they will take all of these 140 small pictures and mesh them together and stitch them together to create a very high resolution image. For people that aren't familiar, a megapixel is 1 million pixels. Your average digital camera that most people have on their cell phone or that they use for vacation has about 5 megapixels in it. But a gigapixel is actually 1 billion pixels. And so this allows, this kind of amazing amount of pixels allows for very high quality images, but it also allows you to zoom in at a very extensive rate. So again, we can go into brushstroke level, and that's really why we chose this painting, because of what Emma was describing earlier, the amazing kind of green field brushstroke juxtaposed with the more geometric side of Seawall really enables people to get close and personal with this work. So we're really excited about that. So like I said, it really only took us about an hour and a half to take these 140 images. Then, to Carl's point, color was incredibly important to us. So we took also about an hour to an hour and a half just to work on the color scale. And I wish that I could go into more detail about this, but this is kind of the secret proprietary part of the process. You see a shot right now of some of the detail in which MagPixel was really making sure that the color was right. They have a proprietary software that they use, that they built. That's what makes their company so special. But it's really about making sure that the colors are absolutely correct. You can see, though, even with all that technology, if you go back to the last slide that we just looked at, they still have an old-fashioned color scale at the bottom of the easel, which I think is really interesting, too. So when all else fails, some of these tried and true technologies can be used as well. Another advantage to picking this work, and one of the reasons why it went so smoothly the day of the capture, was because there's a very low glare varnish on the work. And normally, if you look at some of the other gigapixel scans that are currently on the Google Art Project, these are works from the 17th, 18th, 16th century, even older, and they have a very high gloss varnish, which creates all kinds of shadows. And what was so interesting about this work is because the colors were so vibrant and clear, we didn't run into any of those issues. So it was really kind of an ideal work for many reasons, and the process, I have to say, was really easy and such a pleasure from both start, working with the Diebenkorn Foundation, to the end and working with Google in the Mad Pixel process. So we're excited to be able to have the opportunity to feature Diebenkorn on the Google Art project, to also kind of encourage others possibly to think about copyright issues more openly, and bring 20th century contemporary art and modern art into the Google Art project. That's a need that I think is definitely there, and we're happy to have that. So that's it.
Great. Thanks so much, Sarah. We'll look forward eagerly to seeing our wonderful seawall on the Google Art project. Do we have any more information about when that will go live, or it's just later this summer?
There are several works throughout the country for different museums, and again, top secret information. Everyone will have to stay tuned for that. But we're hoping sometime in August that all of that will go live.
Great, and of course we'll keep you all updated.
Mm-hmm.
All right, June, I'll just remind you to unmute your microphone, and then you can tell us some of your recollections of working with Richard Diebenkorn as a student and a fellow artist.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It was a wonderful experience to work with Richard Diebenkorn in his class at the San Francisco Art Institute, formerly the California Palace of the Legion of Honor. And he was a great influence and inspiration to me. The work was just wonderful, and I wanted to learn everything I could. In the class, he went around and talked to each person individually. He didn't give any overall instructions to the class to watch your perspective or composition or anything like that. He was very personal with each person, and you could talk to him anytime for as long as you wanted. Although he was very careful to not interrupt if you were going at it, painting away like mad. He didn't want to interfere with anything like that. And I had a few questions. One of them was that I was doing a work there in the class that had one spot that I thought was just wonderful. I was so proud of myself. I thought it was great. And he noticed this. He said, "Well, that's got to go." And I said, "Oh no, I don't want to give that up." He said, "Well, it's hanging you up in the painting, and it's just not working for you." So I thought, well, okay, I'll try it. I painted it out, and sure enough, the painting began to come around, and it was much more successful, I thought. I came across a book at the BN store, Abstractions on Paper. It's a good, very good little book. But the thing that attracted me were the comments that he put in that Diebenkorn had said. And one of them was, "There is nothing I cannot paint over." Well, when I read that, I thought about this incident, so I wanted to include it in this little talk today. Also, you could feel pretty free to talk to him about anything about the painting. Nothing was too insignificant or unimportant. If it bothered you, he wanted to help you with it. So that was a very good feeling.
And tell about the still lifes.
And so I wondered, my daughter's here helping me a little bit. This is too much for my generation. Anyway, when I took these classes, it was a very long time ago. It was at least 50 years or more. And it was a great atmosphere. It was a wonderful time for painting. I thought there were a lot of people interested in the California figurative painting style, or whatever it was. And it was very exciting. But in any case, what was I going to say?
Well, one story you were going to tell about when you first came into the class and you were so excited to do the still life, and then he started changing it, and you were disappointed, and then...
Yeah, that was right. He was making an arrangement. We were going to work with a model. The classes lasted about 3 or 4 hours, so you had time to get started on a pretty big painting. And I thought it looked great, but he'd go over and look at it carefully, and then he'd make a change, and I'd think, oh, but it was better. He did that several times. Finally got what he was satisfied with. Well, I learned something about judging things or analyzing a painting or anything. This wasn't even a painting, it was just an arrangement. But it was an important point to me. I was doing some still lifes at home, my studio, and I wondered what he thought about still lifes, and he said, oh, there's great subject matter around the house. As I found out later, looking at some of those nice little drawings and paintings that he had done of the still lifes, they were beautiful. So, well,
can we have another slide? You want to put another slide on there?
Okay.
I don't know how to do that.
I don't know if you can see any relationship to the figurative painting, but I did have some sense of using portions as more just painting areas, not being so realistic about things, but thinking about the overall design and expression. And I must say that Diebenkorn really appreciated the element of surprise in a painting. And so that freed you up a lot to let things happen. So I tried to have that in mind when I was painting. And it did help a lot to have that attitude. Some of the remarks that he made that I can't remember, 50 years is a long time, but the attitudes that he had was very inspiring, accepting of things.
How about another slide? I think we have 4 altogether.
Okay. Oh, in this painting, you can see in the background the big beige area and then the green on the one side. I didn't paint those realistically. They were just shapes. This seemed to work. So shapes were important that I was able to use that idea a little bit and simplify the painting, and also try to take chances and not be so careful about it all. It was great era to paint. There were a lot of people working in this way, good painters. So it was very worthwhile. I'd like to leave you with a remark that was put in this little book, The Abstractions on Paper, by Bert Schneider. Diebenkorn says, I can never accomplish what I want, only what I would have wanted had I thought of it beforehand. He said a lot of things like that. There are just marvelous ways of putting an emotional statement or observation or what was really going on. So I value these times very much and appreciate the current show at the D Young because it brings back a lot of feelings that a lot of us had in those days. It was a very exciting time to paint, and I'm lucky to have been part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jude. That was wonderful. A real treat to experience your memories of working and learning from Diebenkorn.
Oh, thank you.
I think now's a great time for us to kind of engage with each other and do a little bit more freeform. We have a question, looks like, coming in from the Google Art Project's Google Plus page for Sarah, and probably Emma as well. And that is, what would you choose as your next gigapixel from the collection, and why?
Well, actually, I'll just jump in here because I think originally our intention was to use Frederick Edwin Church's Rainy Season in the Tropics, which is the great masterpiece of our sort of Hudson River School collection. Usually hangs in Gallery 26 at the De Young on the 2nd floor, but it's actually out on loan right now for the Civil War in American Art show that was traveled by the Smithsonian American Art Museum, and which I just had the opportunity to see at the Met. And it's a wonderful painting to focus on for the Gigapixel project because there are these incredibly detailed, intricate passages in the work, but it's not here. So actually the fact that it's currently not on site was really what prompted and gave us the opportunity to focus on seawall, which I think worked out very well. But I would assume that that might be the next candidate for a scan.
Well, and what a wonderful contrast that would be, because as we know, as frequent visitors to that painting, it's huge. It's really monumental, whereas seawall is so much more intimate in scope. So I'm sure, Sarah, it would be wonderful to sort of come back and tell us about the differences in capturing each of those two very different works in this process.
It might take more than 1.5 hours. I don't know.
I would imagine. I had a thought, Emma, that I wanted to just bring to the table, which struck me when reading your essay and the catalog, and of course hearing all of the commentary over the past couple of opening weeks for the exhibition about Diebenkorn's use of the aerial perspective and landscape in his work. And to me it really seems like he's kind of subversively using the aerial view as a way to sneak landscape in under the noses of such, paragons of abstraction like Still and Clement Greenberg. Do you have a sense that he was actively kind of trying to rub it in their noses, albeit under their nose?
That's a really interesting way of phrasing it. I don't know if I would characterize it as such a conscious effort. I think, though, he does acknowledge the struggles that he had with reconciling these kind of very rigid, dogmatic, sort of take no prisoners positions on pure abstraction that these figures really espoused at this time. In that wonderful quote that Mark gave, where he says that he had been fighting the landscape feeling prior to moving to Albuquerque, but there he kind of relaxed and let it really inflect his work. So I think you're right that there is a way in which he's actually acknowledging and reflecting on how he sort of disengaged himself from that very stultifying kind of rigid atmosphere and sort of beat to his own drum. And I do think that the aerial view gave him a kind of way in, a sort of very formal perspective that actually kind of flattens out subjects from the real world and really thus is able to kind of integrate this modernist emphasis on the flat picture plane with an interest in representational subject matter in the landscape. So yeah, in a manner of speaking, I think it allowed him to really do his own thing.
Yes, I agree.
We hadn't talked about saying much.
I guess I feel that
Well, if I have a chance to say anything else.
he's not interested really in responding to critical analysis of his work because he's so engaged with his own process. Whether it's representational or not ultimately didn't matter. And that's what he said after he returned to non-objective work in the Ocean Park series.
Interesting.
Okay.
Carl, I'm wondering if sorry, go on, Emma.
No, I was just going to give that great anecdote. When he switched to representation, when he's at the height of his sort of fame and sort of powers as an abstract expressionist artist, a collector called him to complain, "What have you done to the value of my paintings?" And he later said, "I really wasn't going to let critical or commercial concerns dictate whether or not I was going to go on painting in the figurative mode or not." So this is absolutely someone who is really immune to these kind of external pressures, and I think that makes him a very interesting and refreshing sort of art world figure.
Yeah, and to bridge that point with how wonderful it was to hear June talk about the experience at the California School of Fine Arts, that seems to have been something that was felt across the board for a lot of, if not all, the artists there, that they were creating either for their peers or for themselves, and not for the commercial market, which, especially in the 40s and 50s, probably didn't exist much in San Francisco for the type of works they were making.
Great. And Carl, I was just wondering if, after seeing Sarah's presentation, what if any, relationship do you see developing between the work that you do in terms of digitally mastering color and if there are opportunities for technologies like the gigapixel scan to sort of inform or communicate with the technology you are using in your work?
I think it's a very interesting thing because there's at least two different tracks there. There's digital delivery and then there's print delivery. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I was trying to talk about in the little presentation is how we have to make that transition into the print delivery. But with the gigapixel scanning and the Google Art Project, everything can be digital, be born digital, and then stay digital, and have less of those issues with the translation. But I think they're both going to be particularly valuable as we go down the road. All the talk about what's going to happen to the future of the publishing industry, but how solid it seems to be the market for art books. And so people are still going to want to have beautiful exhibition catalogs that have great reproductions. But they're probably also going to want to look at their screen, their huge flat panels, and look at these paintings. And even if it's a small painting, want to get as close as possible, look at the texture, and look at the incisions that are made, and all the details that are there that on the printed page have to be compacted. One of the things that we noticed when we were on press is how there were always these subtle touches of orange in almost every piece that was in the catalog. So we would challenge people to get the catalog and look through and find that orange in each of these pieces. In Seawall, looking at it right now, it's towards the middle. There's a little bit of orange speck there. And something like the Google Art Project with the Google Gigapixel scan, Googlepixel scan, people are probably going to have wonderful perspectives on all the types of textures in there, and as Mark spoke about the lines.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. And I think June had one more quote from Diebenkorn, and then we'll get ready to sign off here.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, something that impressed me was that I had been working away at my studio at home and at the class, and I'd work on these things, and then at the end of the day I'd think, well, that's pretty good. I think I've got it. It's done. The next day I go look at it. It's not done. It's awful. I have to work over it some more. And this would go on for days. So I said to Diebenkorn, how do you know when a painting is done? I keep finding that I think it's done, but it isn't. And he said, well, I work on it until it thrills me. Oh, so that's a good thing to have in mind.
That's great.
And I think eventually I did have a few moments when I had that feeling. And it's important to the artist. It doesn't mean that other people are going to have that feeling. Of course, it's Diebenkorn's work. I have that feeling when I look at it. Everything he does is a kind of surprise. And the things he said were also like that. Thanks very much.
Thanks, June. All right, well, thank you so much to all of our speakers, and of course a huge thanks to Simon and Lucy Schwartz, who couldn't be here today, but from Google. Thanks for all of your help in facilitating this talk, and I think we all know a little bit more about Richard Diebenkorn now, so please do bring this knowledge with you to our exhibition, which is currently on view at the De Young and will be through September 29th. So thank you all so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, June. Thank you, Sarah, for this art talk. And please look out on the Google Plus page for the next art talk. We will continue this series of art talks. And thanks, everybody, for watching and for asking questions. And this is it. Bye-bye. See you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.